Hello everybody, Eric again. Like and subscribe. Here we go. Let's read about Harry Palmer. Harry Palmer is the name given to the anti-hero protagonist of several films based on spy novels written by Len Deighton, in which the main character is an unnamed intelligence officer. For convenience, the novels are also often referred to as the Harry Palmer novels. Michael Caine played Harry Palmer in 3 films based on published novels featuring this character. The Amstress File, 1965, Funeral in Berlin, 1966, and Billion Dollar Brain, 1967. Caine also starred as this character in 2 other films not directly based on Deighton's novels. The Times called Caine the ultimate film of 60s cool in his first outing as the secret agent Harry Palmer. A trailer for his second role as Palmer described him as possessing horn rims, cockney wit, and an iron fist. The character's thick, horn-rimmed glasses, girls, and disregard for authority were cited by Mike Myers as an influence for Austin Powers. Caine would later star in Austin Powers and Goldmember 2002 with his portrayal of Nigel Powers, father of secret agent Austin Powers, a spoof of Palmer. Origin of the Harry Palmer name. When developing the 1965 film, The Amstress File, based on Len Deighton's 1962 novel of the same name, the production team needed a name for the previously anonymous protagonist, a rough-edged, petty crook turned spy. They chose Harry Palmer because they wanted a mundane name, one that means absolutely nothing, a common name to distance him from Ian Fleming's James Bond, the stereotypical, sophisticated, swashbuckling spy. Caine stated at the time of filming that he knew a dual kid at school called Palmer, with Harry Saltzman saying good, and what about a first name, to which Caine innocently remarked Harry, not realizing his gaffe until seeing his Saltzman stare. Appearances, novel, film, lead actor, notes. The Amstress File, 1962. Horse Underwater, 1963. Funeral in Berlin, 1964. Billion Dollar Brain, 1966. An Expensive Place to Die, 1967. Spy Story, 1974. Yesterday Spy, 1975. Twinkle Twinkle Little Spy, 1976. The Amstress File, 1965. The Amstress File, the 2022 TV series. Funeral in Berlin, 1966. Billion Dollar Brain, 1967. Spy Story, 1976. Bullet to Beijing, 1995. Midnight in St. Petersburg, 1996. Michael Caine, Joe Cole, Michael Caine, Michael Caine, Michael Petrovich, Michael Caine, Michael Caine. Not adapted to a film. Not adapted to a film. Character is renamed Patrick Armstrong. Not adapted to a film. North American title, Catch a Falling Spy. Not based on the Len Deighton novel. Novels. Early novels. Len Deighton introduced the lead character in The Amstress File, his first novel, published in November 1962. In that first-person novel, the intelligence officer is anonymous, although at one point he is greeted by someone saying, "Hello, Harry." He later says, "Now my name isn't Harry." But in this business, it's hard to remember whatever it ever had been. What either it ever had been. Deighton's character is described as working class, living in a back street flat, in seedy hotels, and shopping in supermarkets. He wears glasses, is hindered by bureaucracy, and craves a pay rise. It is revealed in passing that he is from Burnley, Lancashire, and that he was born in 1922 and 1923. Further novels featuring this character have followed, including Horse Underwater, 1963, Funeral in Berlin, 1964, Billion Dollar Brain, 1966, and an expensive place to die, 1967. Again, the lead character is never named, but they appear to be the same character in all of the books. In his 2009 Afterword to Horse Underwater, Dighton noted, now writing a second book, I found it an advantage to have an Anubis hero. He might be the same man, or maybe not. I was able to make minor changes to him and his background. I realized that identifying him as a northerner would make demands on my knowledge that I could not sustain. It would be more sensible to give him a background closer to my own. From the first novel onwards, the narrator shows knowledge of fine food and drink, painting, classical and 20th century music, jazz, military history, and Latin. In Horse Underwater, he is described as an expert on world currency. Later novels and discrepancies. In 1974, the novel Spy Story was published, followed by Yesterday Spy, 1975, and Twinkle Twinkle Little Spy, 1976, also known as Catch a Falling Spy in North America. As the protagonist also remains Anubis in these novels, it is still open to debate whether the narrator of these last three novels is the same as in the earlier books. There is conflicting evidence for either view, though Dighton himself wrote in his introduction to the 2012 reissue of Twinkle Twinkle Little Spy, is this a Harry Palmer story, I am sometimes asked, and the answer is yes. And Arnold Schwartzman's note on the cover illustration states that the back cover montage includes a pair of our hero's glasses that look suspiciously like those worn by Harry Palmer in the Epsos File and other outings. Despite the lead protagonist being unnamed, all 8 books have been unofficially called the Harry Palmer novels, based on the protagonist's name, given in the subsequent film adaptations of the Epsos File and its sequels. Evidence for this narrator being different from the earlier novels comes from Dighton himself, who is quoted as saying that the narrator of Spy Story is not the same character as the narrator of the Epsos File. In fact, for most of Spy Story, the narrator is named and addressed as Patrick Armstrong, although, as another character says, we have so many different names. Additionally, he is reported to be in his late 30s, whereas the narrator of the Epsos File was born in 1922 and 1923, making him in his 40s, and thus implying that this protagonist is different from that of the earlier novels, encouraging the unitary concept that the later novels feature the same narrator is the 1974 Dust Jacket to the Harcourt, Brace, and Jovanovich American edition of Spy Story, in which the cover blurb states he is back after 5 long years' absence. The Imsobinianat, Descent, Buspatatical, English spy who fought, fumbled, and survived his outrageous way through the best-selling Horse Underwater, Funeral in Berlin, and the west of those marvelous celebrated Len Dotson spy thrillers. Likewise, on the 1976 edition Dust Jacket to Catch a Falling Spy, the novel features Dighton's familiar hero, our bespectacled Englishmen. A number of minor characters from the earlier novels also appear in Spy Story, further connecting the books. Film adaptations. The Epsos File. Main article. The Epsos File film. The Epsos File novel came out just after the release of the first James Bond film, Dr. No, 1962. When the novel reached bestseller status, Eon Productions film producers Harry Saltzman and Albert R. Broccoli approached Dighton to write the script for the second Bond film, From Russia with Love, 1963. Although Dighton's screenplay was actually used on the shoot, Saltzman decided instead to make use of the Epsos File in the expectation of beginning a new secret agent film series. Unlike the Bond films, the Epsos File was designed to have a somewhat different, mostly rather neutralistic style with hints of the kitchen sink school film adaptations of which Saltzman had produced. Saltzman, however, also contracted crew members who had worked on the Bond films, including production designer Ken Adam, film editor Peter Hunt, and film score composer John Barry. Michael Caine was chosen to play the lead role. In the film version, Harry Palmer is a British Army sergeant forcibly drafted into the security service to work away a prison sentence for black marketeering. He worked first for Army intelligence, then the Foreign Office. He works for the brilliant but slightly duplicitous Colonel Ross. Harry Palmer has much in common with Dighton, including passions for military history. Harvey Newbegin complains about his bookshelf contents and billion-dollar brain, cooking, and classical music. Sequels after the release of The Ipsos File, 1965, Saltzman Production Company, made Funeral in Berlin, 1966, and Billion Dollar Brain, 1967, both starring Michael Caine. The second Harry Palmer novel, Forest Underwater, was not used. In 1976, Dighton's novel, Spy Story, was filmed with Michael Petrovich as Patrick Armstrong. It is unrelated to Saltzman's Harry Palmer films. In the mid-1990s, two further Harry Palmer films were released. This time was originally with original screenplays, and with Michael Caine returning to the role. These were Bullet to Beijing, 1995, and Midnight in St. Petersburg, 1996, despite sometimes being titled Lynn Dighton's Bullet to Beijing and Lynn Dighton's Midnight in St. Petersburg. Dighton did not participate in the production of these films. Allusions. Evidence of Michael Caine's popular identification as Harry Palmer can be seen in films such as Blue Eyes, 1992, where he plays an ex-spy named Harry, and who has many similarities to Harry Palmer. Caine's Harry Palmer character with the glasses, the girls, and disregard for authority was an influence from Mike Myers' spy-action comedy films, Austin Powers. At Myers' request, Caine starred in Austin Powers and Goldmember 2002 with his portrayal of Nigel Powers, father of secret agent Austin Powers, a spoof of Harry Palmer. In Kingsman: The Secret Service 2014, Caine portrays the beatifical head of a secret espionage unit. Television. Main article, The Ipsos File TV series, a television adaptation of the same name, directed by James Watkins and starring Joe Cole as Palmer, premiered on ITV on the 6th of March, 2022. Bye for now.